What's the difference? You'll be happy to know this is our last what's the difference for the course, other than the what's the differences that you will need to answer for your exams. But I'm hoping that these are feeling very familiar and comfortable to you as we've done them through the entire semester. The first question, explain the difference between a blind study and a double-blind study. Now we know they are very similar because both studies are clinical trials, and they can have a placebo group and a treatment group, that sort of thing. But the thing that makes them different is that in a double-blind study, neither the researcher nor the participants know who has been put into which group. And in a blind study, the participants don't know which group they're in, but the researcher does know which group they're in. So the big difference, between a blind. Okay, so I didn't have to restate the entire thing, just the piece of it that was different. My sentence now reads, the difference between a blind study and a double-blind study is that in a blind study, the participants do not know if they are in the treatment or control group, while in a double-blind study, neither the participants nor the researchers know. Next, explain the difference between a randomized controlled study and a controlled placebo study. So a randomized controlled study means, let's write that, randomized controlled and then controlled placebo. So in a randomized controlled study, that means you're randomly choosing which group a participant will be in. And in a controlled placebo study, that is probably also the case. For a randomized controlled study, then you have a control group and you have a treatment group. And so a randomized controlled study has a control group, and that control group may not receive any treatment at all. So they're just following people who don't smoke, for example. You're not going to give them fake cigarettes and tell them, hey, smoke these. They'll figure it out pretty quick. So the randomized controlled study has randomization in choosing who goes into each group, and then it has a control group that does not receive any treatment, and then they have a treatment group that does receive the treatment. Now for a controlled placebo group, they have also a treatment group and they have a control group, and their control group receives a placebo. And that would be in the case of a particular medicine. You would give half of the people a fake inert ingredient, like a sugar pill, and then the other half would get the actual pill. And that would be a controlled placebo study. Okay, so the big difference is the control group receives a placebo. The other things seem to be the same. So we would say in a controlled placebo study, the control group receives a placebo, I should say, receives a placebo, while in a randomized The control group receives no treatment. And an example of that, remember, was the smokers versus non-smokers. That's the only difference, hopefully, between those two groups. Okay, explain the difference between a treatment group and a control group. So a lot of times on my students' exams, what I see is I have a question that says, describe the treatment groups. And they'll describe the control group and the treatment groups as well. So I want you to make sure that you understand the difference. A control group is not receiving a treatment of any kind. They may be getting a placebo, but they're still just a control group. So they are separate from the treatment groups, and we want to compare the two, the treatment group or groups, with the control group to see if there was indeed any effect based on our treatments. So our control group is not a treatment, it's separate. It's the group that receives a placebo or no intervention at all. So the treatment groups and we'll put in parentheses, it could be groups, receive a treatment that is being proven or researched. While the control group receives no treatment or receives a placebo or fake treatment. So you have two possibilities. We do nothing with them and we just see how they are in 10 years, or we actually give them a fake treatment like a scar so that they think they had shoulder surgery, or we give them a pill that is a sugar pill or some kind of fake pill. Okay, so the big difference between a treatment group and a control group is who's getting the real treatment and who's not. So if I ask you for the treatment group, you should only give me the treatments, the groups that are receiving real treatments that are being tested. And if I ask you for the control group, you should only give me the group that gets a fake treatment or no treatment or a placebo. Okay.